Caleb Hayes stood frozen in the doorway of the cafe, rain dripping from his jacket, staring at a woman who wasn't supposed to be there. She looked up from her phone, dark eyes catching his, and he knew, right then, in that split second, that his brother's stupid favor was about to ruin everything. Or maybe save it. He couldn't tell yet. All he knew was that walking away now would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing, but his feet wouldn't move, because she was smiling at him like she already knew something he didn't, and Caleb Hayes hadn't felt this terrified in years. If you want to see where this story goes, if you want to know whether Caleb runs or stays, stick with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let's go. The rain had started just after 3, turning the afternoon into something gray and heavy. Caleb had been in the back of the bakery when his phone buzzed for the 4th time, flour dusting his forearms, dough rolling beneath his palms. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. "Dad, your phone's going crazy," Emma called from the front counter, her voice cutting through the hum of the mixer. "Let it," he said, not looking up. She appeared in the doorway a moment later, holding the phone out like it might bite her. "It's Uncle Marcus. He says it's important." Caleb wiped his hands on his apron and took the phone, already annoyed. Marcus didn't do important. Marcus did last minute, half-baked, usually involving some girl he'd ghosted or a bet he'd lost. "What?" "Caleb, man, I need you to cover for me. Just this once." "No. I haven't even told you what it is yet." "Don't care, I'm working. It's a date. 5 o'clock, downtown. That little cafe on Maple, the one with the weird art on the walls. I can't make it, and Look, she's a friend of a friend, and I can't just not show up. It'll make me look like a jerk." Caleb pressed the heel of his hand against his forehead. "You are a jerk. Come on, please. Just go. Tell her I got stuck at work or whatever. Apologize and leave. That's it. 30 minutes, max. I'll owe you." "You already owe me." "Then I'll owe you twice." Caleb glanced at the clock. Emma had homework. He had 3 more batches to finish before close. The last thing he needed was to waste an hour playing cleanup for his younger brother's social disasters. "Fine," he said, because saying no to Marcus had never worked anyway. "But you owe me more than twice." "You're the best. Seriously. Her name's Lily, by the way. Brown hair, probably wearing something nice. You'll know her when you see her." Caleb hung up before Marcus could say anything else. Emma was watching him from the counter, arms crossed. She was 9, but she had the look of someone much older when she wanted to. "You're going on a date?" "No, I'm doing your uncle a favor." "Sounds like a date." "It's not." "Are you going to change first?" He looked down at his flour-covered jeans and the t-shirt that had seen better days 3 years ago. "No." "You should." "I'm not staying long enough for it to matter." She shrugged, turning back to her book. "Your funeral." The cafe was tucked between a used bookstore and a dry cleaner, the kind of place that tried too hard to be quirky. The walls were covered in abstract paintings that looked like someone had sneezed colors onto a canvas, and the tables were mismatched, probably on purpose. Caleb hated it immediately. He spotted her before he even walked in. She was sitting by the window, one leg crossed over the other, scrolling through her phone with the kind of casual confidence that made him feel like he'd walked into the wrong room. She was pretty. Not in the overdone way Marcus usually went for, but in a way that was harder to ignore. Dark hair, sharp features, dressed in a navy blouse that probably cost more than his weekly grocery budget. He thought about turning around, just walking away and texting Marcus later that she never showed. But then she looked up, and their eyes met through the glass, and it was too late. He pushed the door open, and a little bell chimed above his head. She smiled. Not the polite, tight-lipped smile people gave strangers, but something warmer. It threw him off. "Marcus?" she asked, standing. "No, Caleb. Marcus's brother." He didn't offer his hand. His palms were still a little tacky from the dough. Her smile faltered, just slightly. "Oh. Yeah, he couldn't make it. Work thing. Last minute. He asked me to come by and let you know. So, that's what I'm doing." She blinked, processing, then she laughed, a short, surprise sound. "Wow. Okay, that's a new one." "Sorry, I know it's weird." "It's definitely weird." She tilted her head, studying him. But you came all the way here just to tell me that? He's my brother. I didn't really have a choice. You could have just called. Probably. Yeah, I didn't think of that. She laughed again, and this time it was easier, more genuine. Well, since you're here, you want to sit down? Or are you in a hurry to get back to whatever it is you do that gets you covered in flour? He looked down at his shirt, realizing too late that Emma had been right. I own a bakery, was in the middle of a batch when Marcus called. A bakery, she repeated like she was trying the word out. That's not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Something boring. Accountant, maybe. Insurance sales? Sorry to disappoint. I didn't say I was disappointed. She gestured to the chair across from her. Come on, sit. I already ordered coffee. You might as well stay for a few minutes, unless your bakery's on fire or something. It wasn't on fire. Emma was holding down the fort, and the dough could rest for another 20 minutes. He should have said no, should have made an excuse and left. But there was something in the way she looked at him, curious maybe, or just amused, that made him pause. He sat. So, she said, leaning back in her chair. Caleb, the responsible older brother who runs a bakery and does favors for his flaky sibling. Am I getting that right? More or less. And you're here out of obligation, not because you wanted to meet me. Pretty much. Refreshingly honest. She sipped her coffee, watching him over the rim of the cup. I'm Lily, by the way, since your brother apparently didn't bother with the details. He said you were a friend of a friend. That's generous. We met at a work thing a few months ago. He seemed fun. Charming, you know. I didn't realize he was also the kind of guy who sends his brother to do his dirty work. He's not usually, just sometimes. Often enough that you agreed to come. Like I said, he's my brother. She smiled, and it was softer this time. You're loyal. That's rare. He didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, the rain picked up, drumming against the window. A couple walked past, huddled under a shared umbrella, laughing about something Caleb couldn't hear. So, Lily said after a moment, tell me about this bakery. Not much to tell. I make bread, sell it, repeat. That's the worst sales pitch I've ever heard. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Maybe you should be. Where is it? Couple blocks from here, north side, small place, nothing fancy. Do you like it? The question caught him off guard. People didn't usually ask him that. They asked how business was, whether he was making enough to get by if he'd ever thought about expanding, but not whether he liked it. Yeah, he said, and it was the truth. I do. Why? He thought about it. I don't know. It's simple, I guess. You follow a recipe, you get a result, no surprises. And people like bread. It makes them happy. That's worth something. She nodded slowly, like she was turning his words over in her mind. That's a good answer. What about you? What do you do? Marketing, corporate stuff mostly, events, campaigns, that kind of thing. It's fine, pays well, keeps me busy. But do you like it? She hesitated, and in that hesitation, Caleb saw something he recognized. The same look he'd seen in the mirror on bad days, when the bills piled up and Emma asked for things he couldn't afford. The look of someone who'd chosen practical over passionate and was still trying to convince themselves it was the right call. Sometimes, she said finally, when it doesn't feel like I'm just pushing paper around to justify someone else's bonus. Sounds fulfilling. She laughed, sharp and sudden. You're kind of a smartass, aren't you? Only when I'm nervous. Are you nervous? Little bit. Why? Because I didn't plan on sitting here talking to you. I planned on delivering a message and leaving, and now I don't really want to leave, and that's complicated. Her expression shifted, something unreadable flickering across her face. Complicated how? I've got a kid, he said, because it was easier to lead with that than explain the rest. A daughter. She's 9, and I don't really do this. The dating thing. Haven't in a long time. Because of her? Because of a lot of things. But yeah, mostly because of her. Lily didn't flinch, didn't pull back or change the subject the way most people did when he mentioned Emma. She just nodded. What's her name? Emma. Is she like you? In what way? Stubborn? Honest, bad at small talk. He smiled despite himself. Yeah, pretty much. She sounds great. She is. The rain was coming down harder now, turning the street outside into a blur of headlights and umbrellas. Caleb checked his phone. Almost 5:30. He'd been here longer than he'd meant to. I should probably go, he said, even though he didn't move. Probably, Lily agreed. She didn't move either. He stood, shoving his hands into his pockets. For what it's worth, I don't think Marcus deserved you showing up in the first place. And you did? No, but at least I'm honest about it. She smiled, standing as well. You know, for a guy who didn't want to be here, you're not bad company. That's a low bar. Maybe. But you cleared it anyway. They stood there for a moment, neither of them quite ready to end it. Then Lily pulled out her phone, swiping through screens until she found what she was looking for. Give me your number, she said. What for? So I can text you and tell you how terrible your brother is. Or maybe so I can stop by your bakery sometime and see if your bread is as good as you think it is. He hesitated. Giving her his number meant this wasn't over. Meant there was a chance she'd reach out, and he'd have to decide whether to let her in or keep her at arm's length like he did with everyone else. But Emma's voice echoed in his head, your funeral, and he realized he was tired of playing it safe. He gave her the number. Don't expect anything fancy, he said. It's just bread. I like bread. Everyone says that until they realize it's not cupcakes. She laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that made him want to hear it again. I'll take my chances. He left before he could say anything else stupid, pushing through the door and into the rain. He didn't have an umbrella, so he jogged the 2 blocks back to the bakery, arriving soaked and slightly out of breath. Emma looked up from the counter, one eyebrow raised. How'd it go? Fine. That's it? Just fine? Yeah. Did you like her? He pulled off his jacket, shaking the water onto the floor. Doesn't matter. That means yes. It means it's complicated. Everything's complicated with you, Dad. She wasn't wrong. 3 days later, his phone buzzed while he was elbow-deep in sourdough starter. A no number. So, I'm guessing you don't have cupcakes. He stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back. Caleb. Told you. Just bread. Lily. What time do you close? Caleb. 6. Why? Lily. Because I want to see if you're full of it, or if your bread's actually worth the hype. Caleb. I never said it was worth the hype. I said people like it. Lily. Same thing. See you at 5:45. She didn't wait for a response. Emma noticed him checking his phone more than usual that afternoon. She didn't say anything, but the smirk on her face said plenty. At 5:43, the bell above the door chimed and Lily walked in. She was dressed more casually this time, jeans, a sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked around the bakery, taking it in with the same quiet curiosity she'd had at the cafe. It smells amazing in here, she said. That's the yeast talking. Yeast has good taste. Emma appeared from the back, wiping her hands on a towel. She stopped when she saw Lily, her eyes narrowing slightly in that way kids did when they were sizing someone up. Emma, this is Lily. Lily, this is Emma. Hi, Emma said, polite but guarded. Hi, Lily said, crouching down slightly to meet Emma's eye level. Your dad says you help out here sometimes. Sometimes. When he's not being annoying. Sounds like a full-time job. Emma's lips twitched, almost smiling. Pretty much. Caleb grabbed a loaf of rosemary focaccia from the cooling rack and handed it to Lily. Here, on the house. Are you trying to bribe me? Is it working? She tore off a piece, chewing slowly. Her eyes widened slightly. Okay, that's actually really good. Told you. You didn't tell me anything. You downplayed it, which is somehow worse. He shrugged. I don't like overselling things. Clearly. She stayed for 20 minutes, talking to Emma about school and asking Caleb questions about the bakery that were surprisingly specific. How long he'd been running it, where he sourced his flour, whether he'd ever thought about selling online. He answered honestly, even when the answers weren't impressive. When she finally left, Emma waited exactly 10 seconds before turning to him. She's nice. Yeah. You like her? I barely know her. You gave her free bread. You never give anyone free bread. She's a customer. She's not a customer. She's a girl you like. He didn't argue because Emma would just keep pushing, and he didn't have the energy to deny something they both knew was true. Lily came back 2 days later, then again the following week. Each time, she stayed a little longer, asked a few more questions, laughed a little easier. She and Emma started talking about books. Apparently, they both loved the same series about some kid who could talk to animals. And Caleb found himself looking forward to the sound of the bell in a way he hadn't in years. But he also felt the weight of it. The way people looked at them when Lily was there. Curious glances, whispered conversations. He knew what they were thinking. What's someone like her doing here? With him? One evening, after Lily left, Emma climbed onto the counter, swinging her legs. Do you think she's going to keep coming back? She asked. I don't know. Do you want her to? He didn't answer right away. He wanted to say yes, but wanting something and letting yourself have it were two very different things. Yeah, he said finally. I do. Emma nodded, satisfied. Good, because I think she likes us. She barely knows us. She knows enough. He wasn't sure if that was true, but for the first time in a long time, he wanted to find out. Maybe it was the way she tilted her head when she listened, like she was genuinely trying to understand what he wasn't saying. Or maybe it was the fact that she didn't treat Emma like an obstacle, like something to work around. Either way, by the third week, Lily had become part of the routine in a way that felt both natural and terrifying. She showed up on Thursdays now, always around 5:30, when the last of the day's customers had trickled out and Emma was finishing her homework at the corner table. Sometimes she brought her laptop and worked while Caleb cleaned up. Sometimes she just sat there, reading or scrolling through her phone, content to exist in the same space without needing to fill every silence with conversation. It was the kind of easy that Caleb had forgotten could exist. Dad, can Lily stay for dinner? Emma asked one Thursday evening, not looking up from her math worksheet. Caleb paused mid-wipe, cloth hovering over the counter. I don't know. Maybe she has plans. I don't, Lily said from her spot by the window. She closed her laptop, meeting his eyes with that same quiet amusement she always seemed to carry. Unless you don't want me to. It's not that, we're not doing anything fancy. Probably just pasta. I like pasta. Everyone says that until they realize it's just butter and garlic. Butter and garlic sounds perfect. Emma grinned, victorious. See? She wants to stay. Caleb sighed, knowing he'd lost before the conversation even started. Fine, but you're helping clean up after. Deal, Emma said, already packing up her books. They walked the 4 blocks to Caleb's apartment together, Emma chattering the entire way about a project she was doing on marine animals. Lily asked questions, real ones, not the polite kind adults asked when they were only half listening, and Emma responded with the kind of enthusiasm she usually reserved for her favorite books. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that barely fit a table, a living room cluttered with Emma's art supplies, and Caleb's collection of cookbooks he never had time to read. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, and he'd worked hard to make it feel like home after everything fell apart. Lily didn't comment on the size or the mismatched furniture or the crack in the ceiling he kept meaning to fix. She just set her bag down by the door and asked where she could help. You don't have to do anything, Caleb said, pulling a pot from the cabinet. I know, but I want to. Can you chop garlic? I can try. She wasn't lying. Her knife skills were terrible. Uneven chunks, half of it still in papery skin. But she laughed about it, and Caleb found himself standing closer than necessary, showing her how to hold the blade, his hand briefly covering hers. Emma watched from the table, pretending to read her book but clearly paying attention to everything. Dinner was simple. Pasta, garlic, butter, a little parmesan Emma had grated herself. They ate at the small table, knees occasionally bumping, and talked about nothing important. Lily told them about a client who'd insisted on using Comic Sans in a presentation. Emma recounted a fight between 2 kids in her class over a missing eraser. Caleb mostly listened, letting the conversation wash over him, feeling something loosen in his chest that had been tight for years. After Emma went to bed, after an extended negotiation about whether she could stay up an extra 30 minutes, which Lily wisely stayed out of, Caleb and Lily sat on the couch, mugs of tea cooling between them. "She's a great kid," Lily said quietly. "Yeah, she is. Takes after you, I think. In the stubborn part, maybe. In the good parts, too." He didn't know what to say to that, so he sipped his tea and let the silence stretch. Outside, a car alarm went off, then stopped. Somewhere above them, footsteps creaked across the floor. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said after a while. "Sure." "Where's her mom?" It was the question everyone eventually asked, usually with the same careful tone, like they were stepping around a landmine. Caleb had answered it enough times that he'd developed a script. Short, factual, devoid of emotion. "She left when Emma was 2, he said. Decided being a mom wasn't what she wanted. Signed over custody, moved to California. We haven't heard from her since." Lily didn't respond right away. She just nodded slowly, absorbing it. "That must have been hard." "It was, but we managed. Do you ever—" She stopped, shaking her head. "Never mind, that's not my business." "What?" "I was going to ask if you ever regret it, taking care of her alone, but that's a stupid question." "It's not stupid." He turned the mug in his hands, watching the tea swirl. "And no, I don't regret it. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, but yeah, it's hard. Some days harder than others. You make it look easy. That's because you only see the good days." "I doubt that." He looked at her then, really looked at her. She wasn't trying to fix anything or offer empty reassurances. She was just there, present, listening. It was more than most people managed. "Why are you here, Lily?" he asked, and it came out rougher than he meant. "I mean, really, you could be anywhere, doing anything, with anyone. And you keep coming back to a bakery in a neighborhood that's not even on your way home to spend time with a guy who can barely afford to keep the lights on." She didn't flinch. "You want the honest answer?" "Yeah. Because I like it here. I like you. I like Emma. And I'm tired of pretending that the life I'm supposed to want actually makes me happy." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I spend most of my time around people who care more about appearances than actual connection. Who measures success by job titles and square footage, and whether you're wearing the right brands. And it's exhausting. Being here, with you, it doesn't feel like that. It feels real. Real's messy. I know. I don't care." "You might, eventually." She set her mug down and turned to face him fully. "Why are you trying to talk me out of this?" "Because I've been here before. I know how it goes. You think it's charming now. The whole humble single dad with a bakery thing. But the novelty wears off, and then you realize you're dating someone who works 60 hours a week and still can't afford a vacation. Someone whose life revolves around a 9-year-old's schedule. Someone who's never going to be able to give you the things you're used to. You think that's what I care about? Things? I think people always care more than they admit." Her jaw tightened, and for a second he thought she might leave. Instead, she leaned back, crossing her arms. "You know what I think? I think you're scared. And instead of admitting that, you're trying to push me away before I can hurt you." "That's not—" "Yes, it is. You've been doing it since the day we met. Every time things feel like they might actually go somewhere, you find a reason to pump the brakes. And I get it. I do. You've been through hell, and you've built walls to keep yourself and Emma safe. But I'm not asking you to tear them down overnight. I'm just asking you to let me stand on the other side and see what happens." He wanted to argue, wanted to explain all the ways she was wrong, all the reasons this couldn't work, but the words stuck in his throat because she wasn't wrong. Not really. "I don't know how to do this," he said finally. "Neither do I. But we can figure it out." "What if we can't?" "Then at least we tried." He looked at her, this woman who'd walked into his life by accident and refused to leave even when he gave her every reason to, and felt something shift. Not a grand revelation, just a quiet acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to do everything alone. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Yeah, let's try." She smiled, and it was soft and genuine and completely free of the guardedness he carried everywhere. "Good. Because I already told Emma I'd help her with her science project next week, and I'd hate to back out now." He laughed despite himself. "You're terrible." "You like me anyway." "Yeah, I do." She left a little after 10, and Caleb stood in the doorway watching her walk to her car, hands shoved in his pockets, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Not quite hope. It was too fragile for that. But maybe the possibility of it. The next few weeks blurred together in a way that felt almost normal. Lily kept showing up. Emma kept asking when she was coming back. The bakery kept running, barely profitable, but steady enough. Then the whispers started. It was subtle at first, customers lingering a little longer when Lily was there, eyes flicking between them. A regular named Diane, who always bought 2 baguettes on Saturdays, asked, "So is she your girlfriend?" with the kind of forced casualness that meant everyone was already talking about it. "Friend," Caleb said, even though he wasn't sure that was true anymore. "Mm-hmm," Diane said, clearly unconvinced. He tried to ignore it, but then Marcus called. "Dude, are you seriously dating the girl I set you up with?" "You didn't set us up, you bailed and sent me instead." "Same thing. It's really not." "Whatever. Is it serious?" Caleb hesitated. "I don't know, maybe. You know she works for Whitmore and Associates, right?" "I know she does marketing." "Not just marketing. She's a senior consultant. She's been profiled in business magazines. Her LinkedIn has like 1,000 connections. She's out of your league, man. Way out." "Thanks for the vote of confidence. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just saying, don't get too attached. Girls like that don't stick around guys like us." Caleb wanted to hang up, wanted to tell Marcus he didn't know what he was talking about. But the words lodged in his throat because part of him, the part that had been burned before, wondered if Marcus was right. He didn't tell Lily about the call, didn't mention the looks or the whispers or the growing knot in his stomach every time she walked through the door. But she noticed anyway. "You okay?" she asked one evening, leaning against the counter while he restocked the display case. "Fine. You've said 3 words in the last 20 minutes. Just tired." "Caleb." He set down the tray, exhaling slowly. "People are talking." "About what?" "Us. You and me. They don't get it." "What's there to get?" "Why you're here. Why you keep coming back. They think—" He stopped, shaking his head. "Never mind." "Say it." "They think you're slumming it, that you're bored or looking for some kind of project, and eventually you'll get tired and move on." Her expression hardened. "And you believe them?" "I don't know what I believe." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got right now." She stared at him for a long moment, and he couldn't read what was going on behind her eyes. Then she grabbed her bag and walked out without another word. He didn't see her for 3 days. Emma asked about her constantly. "Where's Lily? Is she coming today? Did you guys have a fight?" "We didn't fight," Caleb said, even though it felt like a lie. "Then why isn't she here?" "She's busy." "You're lying." "Emma." "I'm not stupid, Dad. I know something happened." He didn't have an answer for that, so he just kept working, kept moving, kept pretending everything was fine, even though it clearly wasn't. On the 4th day, his phone buzzed. "Lily, can we talk?" Caleb, "Yeah." "Lily, meet me at the cafe, 6 p.m. He almost didn't go. Almost convinced himself it was better to let it end now, cleanly, before anyone got hurt worse. But Emma found him staring at his phone in the back room and said, "If you don't go, you're an idiot." And he figured she was probably right. Lily was already there when he arrived, sitting at the same table by the window where they'd first met. She didn't smile when she saw him, just gestured to the chair across from her. He sat. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what you said, about what people think. And I'm angry, Caleb. Not at you. At them. At this stupid idea that people have to fit into neat little boxes, that relationships only make sense if they look a certain way from the outside." "Lily, let me finish." She leaned forward, hands flat on the table. "I don't care what they think. I don't care if they don't understand why I'd rather spend my evenings in a bakery than at some overpriced restaurant with people I can't stand. I don't care if they think I'm wasting my time. Because I'm not. Being with you and Emma, it's the first time in years I felt like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. You say that now. I mean it now, and I'll keep meaning it, but I need you to believe me, because if you don't, if you're just waiting for me to prove everyone right, then this isn't going to work." He wanted to believe her, wanted it so badly it hurt, but the fear was still there, coiled tight in his chest, whispering that people like her didn't stay with people like him. "I'm trying," he said, and his voice cracked on the words. "I swear I'm trying. but I've done this before. I've let someone in, and they left, and it nearly broke me. And if that happens again, if Emma gets attached and you walk away, I don't know if we'll recover. I'm not her, Lily said quietly. I'm not your ex. I'm not going to leave just because things get hard. How do I know that? You don't. Not for sure. But that's the risk, isn't it? That's what this is. You take a chance and you hope it works out. And if it doesn't, you deal with it. But you can't live your whole life protecting yourself from maybes. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on him. The bakery. Emma. The years of scraping by and pretending he didn't want more, because wanting more meant risking everything. What if I'm not enough? He said, barely above a whisper. Enough for what? For you. What if 6 months from now you wake up and realize you've made a mistake? That you gave up opportunities, turned down offers, all for some guy who can't even take you on a decent date? Do you think that's what I want? Expensive dates and grand gestures? I don't know what you want. I want this. She reached across the table, taking his hand. Her palm was warm, steady. I want mornings where we make breakfast together and evenings where we argue about what to watch on TV. I want to help Emma with her homework and listen to you complain about sourdough starters. I want normal, Caleb. I want real. And if that's not enough for you to believe in, then I don't know what else to say. He looked down at their hands, fingers loosely intertwined, and felt something in him give way. Not all at once, just enough to let a little light in. I'm scared, he admitted. I know. So am I. You don't seem scared. That's because I'm good at faking it. He laughed, surprising himself. Yeah, me too. They sat there for a while, not saying much, just holding on. And when they finally stood to leave, Caleb realized he wasn't ready to let go yet. Come back to the bakery, he said. Emma's been asking about you non-stop. Yeah? Yeah. And so have I. She smiled, and it felt like something settling into place. Okay, let's go. They walked back together, side by side, and when they pushed through the door, Emma looked up from her book and grinned like she'd known all along how this would end. Told you he'd fix it, she said to no one in particular. Lily laughed, and Caleb shook his head, and for the first time in days, the knot in his chest loosened just enough to breathe. Things were good for a while. Better than good, if Caleb was being honest. Lily folded herself into their lives with an ease that surprised him, showing up for Emma's school play, helping with the weekend farmer's market booth, staying late on the nights when the dishwasher broke and he needed an extra pair of hands. She didn't try to fix everything or insert herself where she didn't belong. She just existed alongside them, filling spaces he hadn't realized were empty. But good things had a way of making Caleb nervous. He kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the moment when reality would catch up and remind him that he didn't get to keep things like this. It started small. Lily canceling plans last minute because of work, a client dinner she couldn't miss, a presentation that ran late. He told himself it was fine, that she had a career and responsibilities, that he couldn't expect her to revolve her entire life around his schedule. But then it happened again, and again. She's busy, he told Emma when she asked why Lily wasn't coming to movie night. She's always busy lately, Emma said, not looking up from her tablet. She has a demanding job. So do you. You still make time. He didn't have an answer for that. By the third week, Lily's visits had dropped from 4 or 5 times a week to once, maybe twice, if he was lucky. Their texts became shorter, more transactional. She stopped calling just to talk. And when she did show up, there was something distant in her eyes, like part of her was somewhere else. Caleb tried not to let it bother him, tried to focus on the bakery, on Emma, on all the things that had mattered before Lily walked into his life. But it was harder than he expected, this absence that had carved itself into his routine. You need to talk to her, Marcus said over the phone one night. About what? About whatever's going on. You've been moping around for weeks. I'm not moping. You're absolutely moping. Even Emma noticed. She's just busy. It happens. Or she's pulling away and you're too scared to ask why. Caleb hung up before Marcus could say anything else, but the words stuck with him. Because maybe Marcus was right. Maybe he was scared. Scared of the answer, scared of losing what little he had left of her, scared of proving everyone right who'd said this would never last. He texted her that night, Caleb, can we talk? She didn't respond until the next morning. Lily, Yeah, sorry, been swamped. What's up? Caleb. Just feels like I haven't seen you in a while. Everything okay? Lily. Everything's fine, just a lot going on at work. I'll try to stop by this week. She didn't stop by that week, or the next. Emma stopped asking about her after the second week, and that hurt more than anything. Because Emma had let Lily in, had started to see her as something permanent, and now she was learning the same lesson Caleb had learned years ago, that people left, no matter how much you wanted them to stay. It was a Tuesday afternoon, slow enough that Caleb had sent his part-timer home early, when the bell above the door chimed and Lily walked in. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that came from a late night, but something deeper, something that sat behind her eyes and pulled at the corners of her mouth. "Hey," she said. "Hey." She glanced around the empty bakery, then back at him. "Can we talk?" His stomach dropped. Those 3 words never meant anything good. "Yeah, let me just..." He wiped his hands on his apron, then realized he was stalling. "Yeah, let's talk." They sat at one of the small tables by the window, the same spot where she used to sit and work on her laptop while he closed up for the day. It felt like a lifetime ago. "I'm sorry I've been distant," she said, not meeting his eyes. "I know I've been flaky lately. That's not fair to you or Emma." "What's going on, Lily?" She exhaled slowly, fingers tracing the edge of the table. "My boss offered me a promotion, a big one. Regional director. It's everything I've been working toward for the last 5 years." "That's great," Caleb said, even though he already knew where this was going. "It's in Chicago." There it was. "Chicago," he repeated, like saying it out loud would make it real. "Yeah, they want me to start in 6 weeks. I've been trying to figure out what to do, how to make it work, but..." She stopped, shaking her head. "I don't know how to make it work, Caleb. Not without asking you to uproot your entire life. And I can't do that. You have the bakery. Emma has school. Your whole life is here." "So you've already decided?" "No, I haven't. That's why I've been pulling away. Because I don't know what the right answer is, and I didn't want to drag you through this mess while I figured it out." He wanted to be angry, wanted to tell her that pulling away was worse than just being honest. But he couldn't muster the energy for it. Because underneath everything, he understood. This was always going to happen. He'd known it from the start, even if he'd tried to pretend otherwise. "When do you have to give them an answer?" he asked. "End of the week. That's 3 days." "I know." They sat in silence, the weight of it pressing down on both of them. Outside, a bus rumbled past, brakes squealing. Someone laughed on the sidewalk, the sound bright and jarring against the quiet inside. "What do you want me to say?" Caleb asked finally. "I don't know. I guess I'm hoping you'll tell me what to do." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because it's your life, Lily, your career. I can't ask you to give that up for me." "What if I want you to?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw the same fear he'd been carrying since the day they met. The fear of wanting something too much, of letting yourself believe in it only to have it ripped away. "I can't," he said quietly. "But sure, because if I ask you to stay, and you resent me for it, we're done anyway. And if you go and we try to make it work from a distance, we'll fall apart eventually. Either way, this ends." "So that's it? You're just giving up?" "I'm being realistic." "Realistic," she repeated, and there was an edge to her voice now. "You know what I think? I think you've been waiting for this. For the moment when you can prove to yourself that you were right all along, that I was always going to leave. That's not fair, isn't it? You've had one foot out the door since day one. Every time things got good, you found a reason to doubt it. And now you've got the perfect excuse to walk away and tell yourself it was inevitable. You're the one leaving, Lily, not me. Because you won't ask me to stay." Her voice cracked on the last word, and he realized she was crying. Not the kind of crying that came with sobs and gasps, just quiet tears that slipped down her cheeks and made her look impossibly young and breakable. He wanted to reach for her, wanted to tell her to stay, to turn down the job, to choose him and Emma and this life they'd been building together. But the words wouldn't come, because asking her to stay meant believing he was worth staying for, and he'd stopped believing that a long time ago. "I'm sorry," he said, and it felt like the most inadequate thing he'd ever said. She wiped her eyes, nodding. "Yeah, me too." She stood slinging her bag over her shoulder, and he didn't try to stop her. didn't say anything as she walked to the door, didn't call after her when she paused with her hand on the handle. "For what it's worth," she said without turning around, "you were wrong about not being enough. You were always enough. You just never let yourself believe it." Then she was gone, and Caleb sat alone in the empty bakery, staring at the table where they'd shared so many quiet evenings, feeling the weight of everything he'd just lost settle into his bones. Emma knew something was wrong the moment she got home from school. She didn't ask about it right away, just watched him with those two sharp eyes of hers while he moved through the motions of dinner, boiling pasta, heating sauce, setting the table with the kind of mechanical precision that didn't require thought. It wasn't until they were halfway through eating, the silence stretching unbearably between them, that she finally spoke. "Lily's not coming back, is she?" He set down his fork. "No, probably not." "Why?" "She got a job offer in Chicago. It's a good opportunity for her." "So she's leaving?" "Yeah." Emma pushed her pasta around her plate, not eating. "Did you ask her to stay?" "It's not that simple." "It kind of is, though. Either you want her to stay or you don't." "I do, but I can't ask her to give up her whole career for us. That's not fair." "Did she ask you what you wanted?" "Yeah." "And what did you say?" He didn't answer because the truth was too complicated and too painful to put into words. Emma stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head in that way she did when she thought he was being an idiot. "You're scared," she said. "Emma, you are. You're scared she'll stay and then leave anyway, so you're pushing her away first, just like you do with everyone." "That's not what I'm doing." "Yes, it is. You did it with Aunt Jenna when she wanted to help after Mom left. You did it with Mr. Patterson when he offered to invest in the bakery. You do it with everyone who gets too close because you think it's easier to be alone than to risk getting hurt again." "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't listen." She stood, taking her plate to the sink even though she'd barely eaten half. "For the record, I think you're making a mistake. Lily made us happy, all of us. And now she's gone because you couldn't just tell her you wanted her to stay." She disappeared into her room before he could respond, leaving him alone with a half-eaten dinner and the growing certainty that she was right. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Caleb threw himself into work, taking on extra batches, staying late to clean equipment that didn't need cleaning. He avoided his phone, avoided thinking about the deadline Lily had mentioned, avoided the hollow ache in his chest that grew worse every time he caught himself looking at the door and expecting her to walk through it. On Thursday, Marcus showed up unannounced. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "Thanks. Emma called me, said you're being an idiot." "She's 9. What does she know?" "Apparently more than you." Marcus leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So what's the plan? You're just going to let her leave?" "It's her decision." "Bullshit. You didn't even fight for her." "What was I supposed to do, Marcus? Beg her to stay and destroy her career in the process? Make her choose between her future and me, knowing she'll regret it either way? Or maybe you trust her to make her own choice instead of deciding for her what she can and can't handle." "You don't get it." "No, I get it perfectly. You're terrified. And instead of being honest about that, you're hiding behind this noble self-sacrifice garbage, so you don't have to admit you're just as scared of losing her as she is of losing you." Caleb wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat because Marcus was right. It had never been about what was fair or what Lily deserved. It had been about protecting himself, about maintaining control in a situation where he had none. "She deserves better than me," Caleb said quietly. "Maybe, but she chose you anyway. Doesn't that count for something?" It did. It counted for everything, and he'd thrown it away because he was too much of a coward to believe in it. "When does she have to give them her answer?" Marcus asked. "Tomorrow, end of the day. So you've got about 24 hours to pull your head out of your ass and fix this. And say what? That I'm sorry? That I want her to stay, but I'm too scared to ask her to?" "That's a start." Caleb ran a hand through his hair, feeling the exhaustion settle into every muscle. What if she's already made up her mind? What if I'm too late? Then at least you tried. But sitting here feeling sorry for yourself isn't going to change anything. Marcus left after that, and Caleb stood alone in the bakery, staring at the shelves of bread he'd baked that morning, thinking about all the ways he'd played it safe his entire life. The safe job, the safe apartment, the safe routine that never asked anything of him except that he keep showing up. Lily had been the first person in years to make him want something more, and he'd let her walk away because wanting more meant risking everything. He closed the bakery early and went home. Emma was in her room, door half open, doing homework at her desk. She looked up when he appeared in the doorway. "Did Marcus talk to you?" she asked. "Yeah. And? And I think you're both right. I screwed up. So fix it." "I don't know if I can." She set down her pencil, turning to face him fully. "Dad, I know you're scared. I get it. But Lily's not Mom. She's not going to leave just because things get hard. And if you let her go without even trying, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life." "When did you get so wise?" "I read a lot." He smiled despite everything. "Yeah, you do. So what are you going to do?" He thought about it. About the bakery and the life he'd built and the walls he'd constructed to keep himself safe. About Lily, standing in the same doorway weeks ago, asking him to believe in something he'd stopped believing in a long time ago. "I'm going to try," he said. "Good." He spent the rest of the evening trying to figure out what to say, how to say it, how to make her understand that he wasn't asking her to give up anything. He was asking her to choose. And if she chose Chicago, he'd support that. But if there was even a chance she might choose him, he needed her to know he wanted that. Needed it, even. He texted her around 10. "Caleb, can I see you? Before you give them your answer?" She didn't respond for an hour, and he'd almost given up when his phone finally buzzed. "Lily, tomorrow morning, the cafe, 8 a.m. Caleb, I'll be there." He barely slept that night, running through a dozen different versions of what he wanted to say, discarding each one as too desperate or too vague or too little too late. By the time morning came, he'd settled on the only thing that felt true, the simplest version of the truth he'd been avoiding since the day they met. The cafe was almost empty when he arrived, just a couple in the corner and an older man reading a newspaper. Lily was already there, sitting at their usual table, hands wrapped around a coffee cup, like she was trying to draw warmth from it. She looked up when he approached, and he saw the exhaustion in her face, the same sleepless night reflected in the shadows under her eyes. "Hi," he said. "Hi." He sat, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Then Caleb took a breath and said the thing he should have said days ago. "I don't want you to go." She blinked, surprised. "What?" "I don't want you to go. I know I said I couldn't ask you to stay, and I meant it. But I also can't let you leave without telling you that if you stay, I'm all in. No more holding back, no more waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want this. I want you. And if you want Chicago, I'll support that. But if there's any part of you that wants to stay, I need you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." She stared at him, something unreadable flickering across her face. "Caleb, I'm scared," he continued, the words tumbling out now. "I'm terrified, actually. Because I've spent so long protecting myself and Emma from getting hurt that I forgot what it's like to actually want something. But I want you, Lily. I want mornings and evenings and all the ordinary in-between moments. I want to fight about stupid things and figure out how to make this work even when it's hard. And I know I don't have much to offer compared to Chicago, but I'm asking anyway. Stay, please." The silence that followed felt endless. She set down her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I turned it down." He froze. "What?" "The job. I turned it down. 3 days ago." Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to know it was the right choice. And I couldn't know that if I told you first and made it about you instead of about me." "Lily, I spent 3 days thinking about what I actually want. Not what I'm supposed to want. Not what makes sense on paper, but what I actually want." And the answer kept coming back to the same thing. You, Emma. This life we've been building. I don't want Chicago. I want this. I want us. He didn't realize he was crying until she reached across the table and brushed a tear from his cheek. "I'm sorry," he said, "for pushing you away. For making you feel like you had to choose alone. I know, and I'm sorry for disappearing instead of just telling you what was going on. So what happens now? Now we figure it out. Together." He laughed, a broken, relieved sound, and she smiled, really smiled for the first time in weeks. They sat there for a long time, hands linked across the table, rebuilding something that had nearly shattered under the weight of fear and miscommunication. And when they finally stood to leave, Caleb felt lighter than he had in days, like he'd been carrying a weight he hadn't realized was there until it was gone. Outside, the morning was cold and clear, the kind of day that felt like a fresh start. Lily slipped her hand into his, and they walked back to the bakery together, ready to face whatever came next. Partborn lưu ý đâm viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện, pha hối thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch, sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề, tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ. Phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc. Kể theo ngôi thứ ba, giữ đồ kịch tính không viết lan man, nhân vật không hoàn hảo, hội thoại tự nhiên, tránh ngôn ngữ văn chương sáo rơi và cụm từ AI điển hình. Viết như nhà văn chuyên nghiệp, không như AI cố gắng nghe sàng. Có yếu tố con người, cầm miêu tả qua mượt mà và hoàn hảo. Kết thúc phần không giới thiệu phần sau, câu chuyện không nhắc đến Chúa. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang document, chỉ dần bắt buộc, không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyền. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí, không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật. Không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Show to 1259 Part 4. Emma was sitting at the counter when they walked in, chin propped on her hand, pretending to read but clearly watching the door. Her eyes went wide when she saw them together, fingers still interlaced, and something in her face shifted, relief mixed with vindication. Told you, she said, not to anyone in particular. Lily laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that broke tension, the kind that reminded Caleb why he'd been willing to risk everything in the first place. You were right. Happy? Very. Emma hopped down from the stool, grabbing her backpack. Does this mean you're staying? Yeah, I'm staying. Good. Because Dad's been miserable without you, and it was getting annoying. Emma, Caleb said, but there was no heat in it. What? It's true. She headed toward the door, pausing to look back at them. I'm going to Sarah's house after school. Don't do anything weird while I'm gone. What does that even mean? Caleb called after her. You'll figure it out, she shouted back, and then she was gone, the bell chiming in her wake. Lily turned to him, eyebrow raised. She's got your number. She's got everyone's number. It's terrifying. They stood there for a moment, the bakery quiet around them, and Caleb realized he didn't know what came next. The grand gesture was over. The declarations had been made. Now they were just two people standing in a bakery, trying to figure out how to turn words into something real. So, Lily said, what now? Honestly, I have no idea. That's reassuring. I've never done this before. The whole committed relationship thing. Not since Emma's mom, and that didn't exactly end well. We'll figure it out as we go. What if we mess it up? Then we mess it up. But at least we'll mess it up together. He kissed her then, right there in the middle of the bakery, flowers still dusting his shirt, and the morning sun cutting through the windows in long golden slashes. It wasn't perfect. His hands were awkward, unsure where to settle, and she was still holding her coffee cup, which made the angle weird. But it was real. And that was enough. The first week after Lily turned down Chicago was harder than Caleb expected. Not because anything was wrong, but because everything felt fragile, like they were building something out of glass and one wrong move would shatter it. Lily started spending more nights at his apartment, which meant navigating the strange intimacy of shared space. She had opinions about how he organized the kitchen. He had opinions about her habit of leaving half-finished coffee mugs on every available surface. They argued about small things, whether the towels should be folded or hung, what constituted an acceptable dinner time, how loud was too loud for morning music. You're really particular about this stuff, Lily said one evening, watching him rearrange the spice rack she'd reorganized earlier. It's not about being particular. It's about having a system. Your system is alphabetical. That's insane. Who alphabetizes spices? People who want to find things quickly. Or people who are control freaks. He stopped, jar of oregano in hand, and looked at her. She was smiling, but there was an edge to it, like she was testing to see how far she could push before he pushed back. Are we fighting? He asked. I don't know. Are we? I can't tell. She sighed, setting down the dish towel she'd been holding. This is weird, right? We're being weird. Little bit. I don't know how to do this either. The living together thing. I've always had my own space. And now I'm here, and I'm trying not to step on your toes, but I also don't want to feel like a guest in your life. He set down the oregano. You're not a guest. Then what am I? He stopped, searching for the right word. You're part of this. Part of us. And yeah, it's weird. And we're going to argue about stupid things like spice organization, because that's what happens when two people try to share a life. But I don't want you to feel like you have to tiptoe around me. Even if I mess up your system? Even then, she smiled, softer this time. Okay, but I'm still not alphabetizing spices. Fair enough. They figured it out slowly in the small moments between the big ones. Lily started keeping a toothbrush in the bathroom, then a drawer of clothes in the bedroom. Caleb learned to let go of the little things, to accept that his carefully maintained routines would shift to accommodate someone else's presence. Emma adjusted too, though not without questions. Is Lily going to live here forever? She asked one night while they were doing dishes. I don't know about forever, but for now, yeah. Is that okay? I guess, as long as she doesn't try to act like she's my mom or something. She won't. She knows that's not her place. Good. Emma scrubbed at a plate, frowning. Do you love her? The question caught him off guard. Where did that come from? I'm just asking. Yeah, I think I do. Have you told her? Not yet. Why not? Because it's complicated. Everything's always complicated with you. She wasn't wrong. Caleb had been holding on to those words for weeks now, feeling their weight every time Lily looked at him with that expression that said she was thinking the same thing but waiting for him to say it first. But saying it made it real in a way that terrified him, because loving someone meant giving them the power to destroy you, and he'd been destroyed before. It was Marcus who finally pushed him over the edge. You're overthinking it, Marcus said over the phone, his voice crackling with static. Just tell her. It's not that simple. It literally is. 3 words. I love you. People say it all the time. People who haven't had their entire life fall apart because they trusted someone. Caleb, man, you can't keep living like this. You can't keep waiting for the worst thing to happen just because it happened once before. Lily's not Sarah. She's proven that over and over. At some point, you've got to take the leap. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But at least you'll know you tried. Caleb hung up, feeling more unsettled than before. He knew Marcus was right. Knew that holding back wasn't protecting anyone, least of all himself. But knowing something and doing it were 2 very different things. The opportunity came on a Tuesday, unremarkable in every way except that it was the first time in weeks they'd had an evening completely to themselves. Emma was at a sleepover, the bakery was closed, and Lily had cooked dinner, pasta again, because it was the one thing she could make without setting off the smoke alarm. They ate on the couch, plates balanced on their knees, some detective show playing on the TV that neither of them was really watching. It was ordinary, comfortable. The kind of moment Caleb used to dread because it reminded him of everything he'd lost. But now it just felt like home. Can I ask you something? Lily said, setting her plate on the coffee table. Sure. Do you ever regret it? Saying yes to this? To us? He looked at her, surprised. No. Why would you think that? I don't know. Sometimes you get this look like you're somewhere else, like you're waiting for something bad to happen. I'm working on that. I know. But I need to know if you're happy. Because I am. And if you're not, I need to know that too. He set his own plate down, turning to face her fully. I'm happy. Happier than I've been in a long time. And yeah, sometimes I get scared. Sometimes I wonder if I'm going to wake up and this will all be gone. But that's not about you. That's about me, and the fact that I've spent so long expecting the worst that I forgot how to hope for something better. So, hope, she said simply. I'm not going anywhere. I need you to believe that. I'm trying. Try harder. He laughed, a short exhale that wasn't quite amusement. You don't pull punches, do you? Not when it matters. He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. I love you. The words came out quieter than he meant, almost swallowed by the noise from the TV, but she heard them. He saw it in the way her breath caught, the way her eyes went bright with something that looked like relief. Say it again, she said. I love you. Again. I love you, Lily. And I'm terrified of it, but I'm done pretending I don't. She kissed him, and this time there was no hesitation, no awkward angles. Just the two of them, tangled together on a worn-out couch in an apartment that was too small and too loud and exactly where they were supposed to be. I love you too, she said when they finally pulled apart. In case that wasn't obvious. It was a little obvious. Good. They stayed like that for a while, the TV droning on in the background, neither of them paying attention. And Caleb thought about all the ways his life had changed in the last few months, all the things he'd been too scared to want until Lily walked in and made him believe they were possible. But believing didn't mean the fear disappeared. It just meant he was learning to live with it. The bakery started doing better around the same time. Not enough to call it thriving, but enough that Caleb could pay his bills without sweating over which ones to delay. Lily had started helping with the books. Turned out she was better with numbers than he was. And together they'd streamlined things, cut unnecessary costs, found new suppliers who didn't charge an arm and a leg for flour. You could actually expand if you wanted, Lily said one Saturday afternoon, spreadsheets open on her laptop. Hire another person part-time, maybe add a weekend catering option. That's a lot of risk. It's also a lot of potential. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? He thought about it, about the bakery he'd built from nothing, the hours he'd poured into it, the way it had been both lifeline and anchor for the last 7 years. Expanding meant change, meant trusting that things could get better instead of just bracing for them to get worse. Let me think about it, he said. Fair enough. But the idea stuck with him, nagging at the edges of his thoughts. He mentioned it to Marcus, who immediately started listing all the ways it could fail. He mentioned it to Emma, who shrugged and said, Sounds cool, I guess. He even mentioned it to Diane, the regular who bought 2 baguettes every Saturday, and she said, About time. Your bread's too good to keep hidden in this tiny place. It was Lily who finally convinced him. What's the worst that can happen? She asked one night, lying in bed beside him, her head on his chest. I lose everything. The bakery goes under. I end up back where I started. And the best? I don't know. It works, I guess. Things get easier. So you're choosing between possible failure and possible success, and you're leaning toward doing nothing because failure feels more certain. When you put it like that, it sounds stupid. It is stupid, but it's also human. We're all scared of the things we can't control. So what do I do? You take the risk. You hire the extra person. You add the catering. And if it fails, we figure it out together. But at least you'll know you tried. He hired someone 3 weeks later. A kid named Danny, 22 and fresh out of culinary school, eager in a way that reminded Caleb of himself before everything got complicated. Danny was clumsy at first, burned a batch of croissants on his second day, and nearly dropped an entire tray of sourdough on the third. But he was fast, and he listened, and he cared about the work in a way that mattered. The catering started small. A friend of a friend needed bread for a corporate event. Then a wedding. Then a series of weekend farmers markets that brought in more customers than Caleb had seen in months. It was exhausting, the kind of exhausting that left him falling asleep on the couch before Emma had even finished her homework, but it was also exhilarating. For the first time in years, he felt like he was building something instead of just surviving. But success brought its own complications. The bakery took up more time, which meant less time with Lily and Emma. He missed dinners, missed movie nights. Came home too tired to do anything but collapse into bed. Lily didn't complain, but he could see the strain in the way she stopped asking if he'd be home for dinner, the way she started making plans that didn't include him. I'm sorry, he said one night, stumbling in after midnight to find her still awake, reading on the couch. For what? For this. For being gone all the time, for asking you to stay and then barely being here. She set down her book. You're building something, Caleb. I get it. But it's not fair to you. Life's not fair. We make it work anyway. I don't want you to feel like you're second to the bakery. I don't. But I also need you to be present when you're here. Not just physically, but actually here. With me. With Emma. He sat down beside her, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. I don't know how to balance it all. The bakery, you, Emma. I feel like I'm failing at everything. You're not failing, you're just spreading yourself too thin, and maybe that means we need to rethink some things. Bring on more help, cut back on the catering until you're not drowning. But we're finally making money. And what's the point of making money if you're too burnt out to enjoy it? She was right. He knew she was right. But letting go of control, trusting someone else to carry part of the load, felt like admitting he couldn't do it alone. And admitting that felt like failure. I'll figure it out, he said. We'll figure it out, she corrected. You're not alone anymore. Stop acting like you are. He hired a second part-timer 2 weeks later, cut the weekend catering back to twice a month instead of every week. Started leaving the bakery at 6 instead of 8, coming home to dinners that were still warm, and a daughter who hadn't forgotten what his face looked like. It wasn't perfect. There were still nights when he came home too tired to talk, still mornings when he left before Emma woke up. But it was better. And better was enough. Emma's 10th birthday came in early November, and Lily insisted on throwing a party. Not a big one, just a few of Emma's friends from school, some pizza, a cake that Caleb baked himself despite Lily's offer to order one. You don't have to do this, he told Lily the night before, watching her blow up balloons in the living room. I know, I want to. Why? She paused, tying off a balloon. Because she's important to you, which makes her important to me. You're not trying to replace her mom, are you? No, I'm trying to be someone she can count on. There's a difference. She already counts on you. Good. Then I'm doing it right. The party was chaos in the best way. Kids running around the apartment, music too loud, frosting smeared on every available surface. Emma laughed until she couldn't breathe. Her friends piled around her, and for a few hours, everything felt exactly right. When it was over and the apartment was quiet again, kids gone, dishes done, Emma passed out in her room from a sugar crash. Caleb and Lily collapsed on the couch, both too tired to move. That was a lot, Lily said. Yeah. Worth it, though. Definitely. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever think about the future? Like, really think about it? Sometimes. Why? I don't know. I just wonder what it looks like. For us. What do you want it to look like? I want this, but more of it. I want mornings where we don't have to rush. I want holidays and birthdays and all the ordinary stuff in between. I want to be here for Emma when she needs me. I want to build something with you that's ours. We're already building it. I know, but I want to make sure you want that too, that you're not just going along with it because it's easier than pushing back. He sat up slightly, turning to look at her. I want it, all of it, and I'm sorry if I've made you feel like you have to question that. I don't question it. I just needed to hear you say it. I want a future with you, Lily. I want everything, and that scares me, but I want it anyway. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made him believe, for the first time in years, that maybe he deserved this, deserved her, deserved a life that was more than just survival. Good, she said, because I'm not going anywhere. They sat there in the quiet, the apartment settling around them, and Caleb thought about all the ways his life had changed. The bakery that was finally thriving, the daughter who was growing up too fast, the woman beside him who'd refused to let him hide behind his fear. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments when the doubt crept in and whispered that it couldn't last. But for the first time, those moments felt manageable, like something he could face instead of something he had to run from. He reached for Lily's hand, and she squeezed back, and they stayed like that until the exhaustion finally pulled them under, tangled together on a couch that had seen too many late nights and early mornings, building a life one quiet moment at a time. Winter came early that year, the kind of cold that settled into your bones and made you question why anyone chose to live in a place where breathing hurt. The bakery stayed warm, though, the ovens running constantly, and people came in just to stand near the heat for a few minutes before heading back out into the gray. Caleb found himself noticing things he hadn't before. The way regulars lingered at the counter, talking about their days like they needed someone to hear them. The way Emma had stopped asking when Lily was coming over, because Lily was just there now, folded into their routine so completely it was hard to remember what life looked like before her. The way the fear that used to wake him up at 3 a.m. had dulled to something manageable, something he could acknowledge without letting it consume him. It wasn't that everything was perfect. Danny had quit 2 weeks before Christmas, got an offer from a restaurant downtown that paid better and had actual benefits, and Caleb had scrambled to cover the shifts until he found someone new. Emma had bombed a math test she'd sworn she was ready for, then cried for an hour because she thought she'd disappointed him. Lily's boss had started dropping hints about another promotion. This one, local but demanding. And she'd been stressed in a way that made her snap over small things, then apologize immediately after. But they were getting through it. Together. And that made all the difference. It was Marcus who brought up the subject Caleb had been avoiding. "So, when are you going to ask her to marry you?" Marcus said one afternoon, sitting at the bakery counter with a coffee and a completely unearned level of confidence. Caleb nearly dropped the tray of baguettes he was holding. "What?" "You heard me? Marriage. When's it happening?" "Who says it's happening? Come on, you're living together. You've been together almost a year. She turned down a massive job to stay here. You love her. She loves you. What are you waiting for?" "I don't know. The right time?" "There's no such thing as the right time. You just do it." "That's terrible advice." "It's the only advice. You're overthinking it like you overthink everything else." Caleb set the tray down, wiping his hands on his apron. "What if she says no?" "Why would she say no?" "I don't know. Maybe she doesn't want to get married. Maybe she thinks it's too soon. Maybe you're spiraling again and need to get out of your own head." He wasn't wrong. The idea had been sitting in the back of Caleb's mind for weeks, maybe longer, growing into something he couldn't ignore. He'd catch himself looking at Lily across the dinner table or watching her help Emma with homework and think, this is it. This is what I want for the rest of my life. But thinking it and saying it were different things, and asking her to marry him felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down and having to choose whether to jump. "What if I screw it up?" he said quietly. "Then you screw it up. But at least you asked." That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be honest. Marcus left after that, and Caleb spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about rings and proposals and all the ways this could go wrong. By the time he got home that evening, he'd half convinced himself to wait, to see how things went, to give it more time. Then he walked into the apartment and found Lily on the floor with Emma, surrounded by poster board and markers, working on some project that had them both laughing so hard they didn't notice him at first. And he realized that waiting wasn't about being careful. It was about being scared. And he was tired of being scared. "What's all this?" he asked, setting his bag down. Emma looked up, grinning. "Science fair project. We're building a model of the solar system." "Like, we're mostly just making a mess," Lily added, a smear of blue marker on her cheek. "Can I help?" "Do you even know the order of the planets?" Emma asked, skeptical. "I know some of them." "That's not reassuring." He sat down anyway, joining them on the floor, and for the next 2 hours they worked on a project that would probably get a B at best, but it didn't matter because this moment, this life, was exactly what he'd been too afraid to hope for. Later, after Emma had gone to bed and they were cleaning up the disaster of markers and glue, Lily turned to him. "You okay? You've been quiet tonight." "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" He almost said it then. Almost asked her right there in the middle of the living room with glitter still stuck to his hands. But he stopped himself because if he was going to do this, he wanted to do it right. "Just work stuff," he lied. "Nothing important." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. "Okay, but if you need to talk, I'm here." "I know." He bought the ring 3 days later. Nothing fancy, he couldn't afford fancy, but it was simple and clean and felt like something Lily would actually wear. The jeweler asked if he wanted it engraved, and Caleb almost said no before changing his mind at the last second. "What should it say?" the jeweler asked. Caleb thought about it, about all the words he'd said and hadn't said, all the moments that had brought them here. Just, "We figured it out." The jeweler raised an eyebrow but didn't comment, and Caleb left the store with a ring box in his pocket and a plan that was barely half formed. He told Emma first, because not telling her felt wrong. "I'm going to ask Lily to marry me," he said one morning while they were getting ready for school. Emma stopped mid-brush, toothpaste foaming at the corners of her mouth. She spit into the sink, rinsed, then turned to him. "Seriously?" "Yeah, is that okay?" "Are you asking my permission?" "I'm asking if you're okay with it." She thought about it, really thought about it, In that way she did when something mattered. Do you love her? Yeah, I do. And she makes you happy? She does? Then yeah, it's okay. She paused, then added, but if she says no, you're going to be really sad, and that's going to be annoying. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Just being honest. He'd planned to wait for the right moment, some perfect evening when everything aligned and the words would come naturally. But perfect moments didn't exist, and he was tired of waiting for things that weren't going to happen. So he asked her on a Tuesday. No warning, no build-up. Just the two of them in the bakery after close, Lily perched on the counter going through receipts while he swept the floor. Lily. Marry me. She looked up, pen frozen midair. What? Marry me, he said again, setting the broom aside. His hands were shaking, and he shoved them into his pockets to hide it. I know it's not romantic. I know I don't have a speech prepared or a fancy dinner planned, but I don't want to wait for the perfect moment because there's no such thing. I just know that I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life figuring things out with you. So, marry me. She stared at him, and for a terrifying second he thought she was going to say no. Then she started laughing, not cruel laughter, but the kind that came from shock and disbelief and something that looked a lot like joy. You're serious? Yeah. You're proposing to me in a bakery at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday while you're holding a broom. I know it's not, it's perfect, she interrupted, sliding off the counter. It's the most you thing you could have done, and it's perfect. So is that a yes? Of course it's a yes, you idiot. She crossed the space between them, and he pulled the ring box from his pocket, fumbling it open with fingers that wouldn't cooperate. The ring looked smaller than he remembered, almost ridiculous in the dim light of the bakery. But Lily took it like it was the most valuable thing she'd ever held, slipping it onto her finger with hands that trembled just as much as his. We figured it out, she read, and when she looked up at him, her eyes were bright with tears. When did you? A few days ago. I didn't know what else to put. It's perfect. They stood there for a long time, holding each other in a bakery that smelled like yeast and flour, and all the ordinary things that made up a life. And Caleb thought about the day he'd walked into that cafe, soaked from the rain, dreading every second of what he thought would be the worst favor he'd ever done for his brother. He thought about how close he'd come to walking away, how close he'd come to letting fear win. I'm glad you stayed, he said quietly. Me too. Emma took the news exactly as expected, with a shriek that probably violated noise ordinances and a demand to be involved in every single wedding decision. Can I be a bridesmaid? She asked immediately. You can be whatever you want, Lily said. Can we have cake? Like a lot of cake? Your dad's making the cake, so yeah, probably too much cake. Can I bring a +1? You're 10. Who are you bringing? I'll figure it out. They planned the wedding for spring, small and simple because neither of them wanted the stress of something elaborate. Just family and close friends in a garden that belonged to a friend of Marcus's, someone who owed him a favor and didn't ask too many questions. The months leading up to it were a blur of decisions that felt simultaneously important and completely meaningless. Flowers or no flowers. Sit-down dinner or buffet. Band or DJ, or just a playlist on someone's phone. Caleb tried to care, tried to have opinions, but mostly he just wanted to get to the part where Lily was his wife and they could stop planning and start living. You're being weirdly calm about this, Lily said one night, lying in bed beside him. Should I be freaking out? Most grooms do. I'm not most grooms. Clearly. Are you freaking out? A little. Not about marrying you, just about all the details. What if something goes wrong? Then something goes wrong. We deal with it. That's very zen of you. I've learned a few things, she laughed, turning to face him. Like what? Like nothing's ever going to be perfect, and trying to make it perfect just makes you miss the good parts. So I'm not worried about the flowers or the food or whether it rains. I'm just focused on the part where I get to marry you. That's probably the sweetest thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it. Too late. The wedding was not perfect. It rained. Of course it rained, and they had to move everything under a tent that wasn't quite big enough. The caterer showed up an hour late. Emma's dress got a stain on it before the ceremony even started. Marcus forgot the rings and had to sprint back to his car to get them while everyone waited. But none of it mattered. Because when Caleb stood at the front of that tent, watching Lily walk toward him in a dress that was simple and beautiful and so perfectly her, he realized that this was what mattered. Not the details or the planning or the things that went wrong, just this moment, just her. The ceremony was short. Neither of them wanted long speeches or elaborate vows. They kept it simple. Promises to love each other, to support each other, to keep figuring things out together even when it was hard. And when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Caleb did, and the tent erupted in applause, and for the first time in his life, he felt completely certain he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The reception was louder, messier, better. Emma gave a speech that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. Marcus told an embarrassing story about Caleb from when they were kids that was probably 90% fabricated. Lily's friends from work showed up with expensive wine and stayed longer than expected, dancing to bad music and pulling everyone else onto the makeshift dance floor. Caleb danced with Lily, then with Emma, then with Lily again. His feet hurt and his face hurt from smiling, and he was pretty sure he'd sweated through his shirt, but he didn't care. Because this, all of it, was his. The bakery that was finally stable. The daughter who was growing up too fast but still looked at him like he hung the moon. The wife who'd chosen him even when logic said she shouldn't. Later, when most of the guests had left and the tent was mostly empty, except for a few stragglers finishing the last of the cake, Lily found him sitting at one of the tables, tie loosened, jacket discarded somewhere he couldn't remember. "You okay?" she asked, sliding into the chair beside him. "Yeah, just taking it all in. It was a good day. It was a great day." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat like that for a while, watching Emma chase fireflies with a couple of kids from the neighborhood, her laughter carrying across the garden. "Do you think we'll be okay?" Lily asked quietly. "What do you mean?" "I mean long term. Do you think we'll make it?" "Yeah, I do." "How can you be sure?" "Because we've already survived the hard part. We've fought and made up and figured out how to be honest with each other, even when it sucks. And we're still here. Still choosing this. I think if we can do that, we can do anything. That's very optimistic for you. I'm trying something new." She laughed, and it was the sound he'd fallen in love with, the sound that had made him believe this was possible in the first place. "I love you." "I love you too." They stayed until the last guest left, until the tent company showed up to start breaking things down, until Emma was half asleep in Lily's arms and the stars were bright overhead. Then they went home. Not to Caleb's apartment, but to the house they'd bought together a month earlier, the one with the extra bedroom for Emma and the kitchen big enough for both of them to work in without bumping into each other. It wasn't much. Still small, still a work in progress. But it was theirs. And as Caleb carried Emma to her bed, tucking her in with the same gentle care he'd used since she was 2 years old, he realized that this was what he'd been fighting for all along. Not perfection, not some grand life that looked good from the outside. Just this, just home. The months after the wedding settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable. The bakery continued to grow, slowly but steadily, until Caleb hired a third employee and started taking Sundays off, something he hadn't done in 7 years. Lily thrived in her job. The promotion she'd been nervous about turning into exactly what she needed. Emma started middle school, which came with its own set of challenges, but they navigated them together, the three of them figuring out homework and friend drama and growth spurts that required new clothes every few months. There were still hard days. Days when the bakery was slammed and Caleb came home too exhausted to speak. Days when Lily's work stress bled into their evenings and they snapped at each other over nothing. Days when Emma pushed back against rules she thought were unfair and Caleb had to be the bad guy. But there were more good days than bad. Mornings where they made pancakes together, flour everywhere, Emma on a stool trying to flip them herself. Evenings where they sat on the porch watching the neighborhood wind down, talking about nothing important. Weekends where they didn't do anything special, just existed in the same space, comfortable and easy and exactly what they needed. It was during one of those ordinary evenings, about a year after the wedding, that Emma brought up the subject Caleb had been quietly dreading. "Can I ask you something?" she said, looking up from her book. "Sure." "Do you think my mom ever thinks about me?" The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading. Lily, sitting beside him, went still. Caleb took a breath, choosing his words carefully. I think she probably does, he said honestly, but I also think she made a choice a long time ago, and that choice had nothing to do with you. It was about her and what she could handle and what she wanted from her life. Do you think she regrets it? I don't know. Maybe. But that's not something you need to carry, Emma. Her choices are hers. They don't define you. Do you ever get mad at her for leaving? He thought about it. Sometimes, but mostly I'm just grateful for what we have. You and me. And now Lily. We're okay, aren't we? Yeah, we are. She was quiet for a moment, then added, I used to think something was wrong with me. Like, maybe if I'd been different, she would have stayed. There's nothing wrong with you, Caleb said, his voice firm. You're smart and kind and funny and everything I could have ever hoped for in a daughter. If she couldn't see that, that's on her. Not you. Do you promise? I promise. Emma nodded, satisfied, and went back to her book. Lily reached for Caleb's hand, squeezing once, and he squeezed back, grateful for her presence, for the way she let him handle it, but stayed close enough to catch him if he stumbled. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Lily found him on the porch, staring out at the quiet street. You okay? She asked, settling into the chair beside him. Yeah, that just caught me off guard. You handled it well. I hope so. I never know if I'm saying the right thing. Nobody does. You just do your best and hope it's enough. He looked at her, this woman who'd walked into his life by accident and stayed by choice. Do you ever regret it? Staying here instead of taking that job in Chicago? Never. Not even once. You gave up a lot. I didn't give up anything. I chose something better. There's a difference. Still, you could have had, I have everything I want, Caleb. A job I'm good at. A family I love. A life that feels real. I don't need more than that. He wanted to believe her. Wanted to accept that she meant it without digging for the doubt underneath. And maybe that was growth. Learning to trust that people meant what they said. That love didn't always come with conditions or expiration dates. I'm glad you're here, he said. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling, and Caleb thought about all the ways his life had changed. The fear that used to wake him at night had dulled to background noise. The bakery that had been a lifeline was now something he enjoyed instead of something he survived. The daughter who'd been his entire world had expanded that world to include someone else. Someone who fit so seamlessly it was hard to remember the before. He thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago, closed off, convinced that keeping people at arm's length was the only way to avoid getting hurt. And he thought about the man he was now, still imperfect, still struggling with doubt on bad days, but willing to try. Willing to believe that good things didn't have to end just because they had before. Do you think we'll be doing this in 20 years? Lily asked, breaking the silence. Sitting on a porch somewhere, talking about nothing? I hope so. Me too. Time moved forward the way it always did, marked by birthdays and holidays and the small milestones that made up a life. Emma grew taller, her voice changing, her interest shifting from picture books to novels that made Caleb feel old when he tried to read them. The bakery hired a 4th employee, then opened a 2nd location across town that Lily managed the business side of, while Caleb focused on the baking. They bought a bigger house, one with a yard and enough space for Emma to have friends over, without everyone tripping over each other. It wasn't perfect. It was never going to be perfect. There were arguments about money and scheduling and whose turn it was to pick Emma up from soccer practice. There were nights when Caleb fell asleep on the couch before Lily got home from work. There were moments when Emma slammed her door and shouted that she hated them both, only to apologize an hour later with the kind of dramatic remorse only a teenager could manage. But it was real. Messy and complicated and theirs. And that was enough. One evening, years after the wedding, Caleb found himself back at the original bakery, closing up alone for the first time in months. Danny had moved on to bigger things, a head chef position at some restaurant downtown, and the new crew was solid, but sometimes Caleb liked the quiet of doing it himself. He was wiping down the counter when the bell above the door chimed. He looked up, ready to tell whoever it was that they were closed, and stopped. Lily stood in the doorway, snowflakes melting in her hair, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might want company, she said. You didn't have to come all the way down here. I know, but I wanted to. She handed him one of the cups and leaned against the counter, looking around the space that had started everything. Do you remember the first time I came in here? You told me I was underselling the bread. You were. You still do. Old habits. Do you ever think about what would have happened if Marcus had actually shown up that day? If you hadn't been the one in the cafe? Sometimes, not as much as I used to. What do you think would have happened? Honestly, I think we would have missed each other completely, and I think I would have kept living the same life, convinced it was enough because I didn't know anything else. And now? Now I know better. She smiled, the kind of smile that still made his chest tighten after all these years. I'm glad Marcus bailed. Me too. They stayed until the coffee was gone and the bakery was spotless, then walked home together through the snow, hand in hand, talking about Emma's upcoming school play and whether they should repaint the kitchen and all the mundane details that made up a shared life. And Caleb realized, somewhere between the bakery and home, that this was it. This was the life he'd been too scared to want. The life he'd convinced himself he didn't deserve. It wasn't grand or extraordinary. It was just this, walking through snow with someone he loved, going home to a daughter who was probably still awake past her bedtime, knowing that tomorrow would bring more of the same ordinary, beautiful chaos. He'd spent so long believing that happiness was something you lost, something that got taken away the moment you let yourself have it. But he'd been wrong. Happiness wasn't something you held on to by keeping it at a distance. It was something you built piece by piece, with people who chose to stay even when staying was hard. What are you thinking about? Lily asked, glancing over at him. Just that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. That's very profound for you. I have my moments. She laughed, and the sound carried through the quiet street, and Caleb thought about all the moments that had led here. The fear and the doubt and the thousand small choices that could have ended differently. And he was grateful for the rain that had pushed him into that cafe, for the brother who'd bailed at exactly the right time, for the woman who'd seen something in him worth staying for. They reached the house, light spilling from the windows, Emma's silhouette visible in the living room, and Caleb paused on the porch, looking at this life he'd built. You coming? Lily asked, hand on the door. Yeah, he said. I'm coming. And he was. Not just tonight, but every night after. Because this, all of it, was his to keep. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't waiting for it to fall apart. He was just living it. The bakery was quiet in the early morning, that pocket of time before dawn when the world hadn't woken up yet and everything felt suspended. Caleb had always loved this part of the day, just him and the dough and the rhythm of work that required his hands but not his words. It was meditative in a way he couldn't explain to people who didn't bake, this process of turning flour and water and time into something people needed. Lily had started joining him some mornings, not to help, but just to be there, sitting at the counter with her coffee and her laptop, working in companionable silence. She was there now, the glow from her screen casting soft light across her face, and Caleb found himself watching her instead of focusing on the sourdough he was supposed to be shaping. You're staring, she said without looking up. Just thinking. About? How different things are now from 2 years ago. She closed the laptop, giving him her full attention. Good different or scary different? Both, maybe. Mostly good. That's progress. He smiled, returning to the dough. Yeah, I guess it is. They'd been married 8 months now, and the newness of it had worn off in the best way. No more trying to impress each other or hiding the messy parts. They'd settled into something real, something that didn't require performance. Lily left her shoes everywhere. Caleb forgot to put the toilet seat down. They argued about whether the dishwasher should be loaded a certain way and whether it was acceptable to eat cereal for dinner when neither of them felt like cooking. It was ordinary. And ordinary, Caleb had learned, was underrated. Emma burst through the door at 6:30, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair still wet from the shower. I need $20 for the field trip. It's due today. Good morning to you too, Caleb said. Morning. $20. Today. Did you ask last week when they sent the form home? I forgot. Of course you did. He wiped his hands and reached for his wallet, pulling out a 20 and handing it over. What's the field trip for? Science museum. We're looking at the planetarium. That sounds cool. I guess. Sarah's going, so at least I'll have someone to sit with on the bus. Lily looked up from her coffee. Sarah's the one who got you into that book series, right? Yeah, she's got good taste. Unlike your father, Caleb said. Unlike my father, Emma agreed, grinning as she stuffed the 20 into her pocket. Can Lily pick me up today? You always forget and make me wait. I do not always forget. You forgot last week. That was one time. And the week before, Lily laughed. I can pick her up. I've got a light afternoon anyway. See? Lily gets it. Emma grabbed a muffin from the cooling rack, blueberry her favorite, and headed for the door. Thanks, Lily. Bye, Dad. Try not to burn anything today. I never burn anything. You burned the focaccia last Tuesday. That was a timing issue, not a burning issue. She was already gone, the door swinging shut behind her, and Caleb shook his head. She's getting too smart. She's always been too smart, Lily said. You're just noticing now because she's using it against you. When did she start liking you more than me? Probably around the time I started actually showing up when I said I would. Ouch. Truth hurts. But she was smiling when she said it, and Caleb knew she wasn't wrong. Consistency mattered to Emma, and Lily had proven herself in ways that went beyond just being present. She'd shown up to school plays and parent-teacher conferences and soccer games, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And Emma, who'd learned early that people didn't always stick around, had started to trust that Lily wasn't going anywhere. The day moved forward the way most days did, customers coming and going, orders to fill, small crises to manage. Danny's replacement, a woman named Tessa, who'd worked in commercial kitchens for years, had a question about the rye starter. The register jammed twice. Someone called asking if they did wedding cakes, and Caleb had to explain for the 100th time that they only did bread and the occasional pastry. By the time he locked up at 6, he was tired in the way that felt earned, the kind of tired that came from work that mattered. Lily had already texted that she and Emma were home, that dinner was started, that he should bring home some of the rosemary bread because they were out. He grabbed a loaf and headed out into the early evening, the streets busy with people getting off work, heading home, living their lives. And Caleb thought about how he used to hate this time of day, this liminal space between work and home when he'd feel the weight of everything pressing down. But now it was just the walk home. Just the 15 minutes between one part of his life and another. Emma and Lily were in the kitchen when he arrived, working side by side on what looked like pasta from scratch. Flour covered the counter, and Emma had it on her nose, her hands deep in dough, while Lily rolled out sheets with the pasta machine they'd gotten as a wedding gift. "You're making pasta?" Caleb said, setting down the bread. "We're making pasta," Emma corrected. "Lily's teaching me." "Since when do you make pasta?" "Since I decided boxed pasta is boring," Lily said. And Emma wanted to learn. "It's actually really fun," Emma added, "even though it's messy." "I can see that." He joined them, not to help but just to watch, and he realized this was what he'd been missing all those years, the sense of home that wasn't just a place but the people in it. The way Emma laughed when the dough stuck to her fingers. The way Lily patiently showed her how to feed it through the machine, adjusting the settings, explaining the process. The way they moved around each other like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. Dinner was chaotic. The pasta was slightly overcooked, the sauce a little too salty, but nobody cared. They ate at the table, all three of them talking over each other, Emma telling them about the planetarium and how the guide said Pluto should still be a planet, Lily complaining about a client who kept changing their mind about everything, Caleb listening and contributing when he had something to add, but mostly just absorbing it all. This was what he'd been protecting himself from, this feeling of having something to lose. Because when you had nothing, there was nothing to take away. But when you had everything, when you had people you loved and who loved you back, the fear of losing it could be paralyzing. Except he wasn't paralyzed anymore. He'd learned, slowly and painfully, that fear wasn't something you eliminated. It was something you acknowledged and then chose to move forward despite. Every day he woke up and chose this. Chose to love Lily, chose to be present for Emma, chose to believe that good things didn't have to end just because they had before. After dinner, while Emma was doing homework in her room and Lily was cleaning up the kitchen, Caleb's phone rang. "Marcus." "What's up?" Caleb answered. "Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while." "Yeah, sorry. Been busy." "Too busy for your favorite brother?" You're my only brother. Still counts, so how's married life? Good, really good, actually. That's disgusting. I'm happy for you, but it's still disgusting. Caleb laughed. What about you? Still dating that woman from the gym? Nah, that didn't work out. She wanted me to go running at 6 in the morning. I'm not built for that kind of commitment. You're a mess. And yet you keep answering my calls. Someone has to. They talked for another 20 minutes, Marcus catching him up on work drama and a disastrous attempt at cooking that had ended with the fire alarm going off. It was easy, comfortable, the kind of conversation they'd been having since they were kids. And when they hung up, Caleb felt grateful for his brother's chaos, for the way Marcus had inadvertently set all of this in motion by bailing on a date he never wanted to go on in the first place. Lily found him on the couch after Emma had gone to bed, sliding in beside him and tucking her feet under his leg. You okay? You've been quiet tonight. Just thinking about how we got here. Regretting it already? The opposite, actually. I was just thinking about that day Marcus called. If I'd said no, if I'd refused to go to the cafe, none of this would have happened. You think about that a lot? Sometimes, not in a bad way, just in a what-if way. I think about it too, she admitted. About what would have happened if I'd just left when I realized Marcus wasn't showing up. If I hadn't asked you to sit down. Why did you? Ask me to stay? She considered it. Because you seemed real. Everyone else I'd been meeting felt like they were performing some version of themselves they thought I wanted to see. But you just told me the truth. That you didn't want to be there. That you were doing your brother a favor. That you had a kid and a bakery and a life that was complicated. And I don't know. That honesty felt rare. I wasn't trying to be honest. I was just tired. Maybe that's the same thing sometimes. He thought about that. About how exhaustion had stripped away his usual defenses. How being too tired to pretend had accidentally been the most authentic version of himself. I'm glad you stayed. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence, the TV playing something neither of them was really watching, and Caleb felt the weight of contentment settle over him. Not happiness exactly. Happiness was too bright, too fleeting. This was something deeper, something that sustained itself through the ordinary and the difficult alike. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came the kind of changes that felt inevitable but still caught Caleb off guard. Emma turned 11, suddenly more interested in her friends than in spending time with him. The bakery expanded again, this time into catering for corporate events, which meant more income but also more stress. Lily got another promotion, one that came with longer hours, but also the kind of recognition she'd been working toward for years. They adjusted. That was what they did now, adjusted instead of breaking. When Emma started pushing boundaries, testing how far she could go before someone pushed back, they set rules and stuck to them even when she sulked. When the bakery got overwhelming, Caleb learned to delegate instead of trying to do everything himself. When Lily's work bled into their evenings, they made a rule about no laptops after 8, no phones at the dinner table. No letting the outside world crowd out what mattered. It wasn't always smooth. There were nights when Caleb snapped because he was tired, when Lily withdrew because she was stressed, when Emma slammed doors and shouted things she didn't mean. But they worked through it. They talked instead of letting resentment build. They apologized when they screwed up. They showed up even on the days when showing up was hard. One Saturday afternoon in late April, Caleb found himself at Emma's soccer game, standing on the sidelines with the other parents, watching his daughter run up and down the field with more enthusiasm than skill. Lily was beside him, cheering louder than anyone else, and Marcus had shown up with coffee and donuts, claiming he had nothing better to do. She's terrible at this, Marcus observed as Emma missed an easy pass. She's learning, Caleb said. She's been learning for 6 months. At some point, you've got to admit she's just not athletic. She's having fun. That's what matters. Whatever you say. But Marcus was smiling when he said it, and when Emma scored a goal, more by accident than design, he cheered louder than anyone else. After the game, they went to the park, letting Emma play on the swings while the adults sat on a nearby bench. Marcus bought ice cream from a vendor, and they sat in the afternoon sun, eating and talking about nothing important. You look happy, Marcus said to Caleb at one point. I am. Weird. Why is that weird? Because you spent most of your adult life being stressed and miserable. This whole relaxed thing is new. I wasn't miserable. You were definitely miserable. Lily laughed. He's not wrong. Whose side are you on? Truth's side. Emma ran over, breathless and flushed from playing. Can we get a dog? No, Caleb said automatically. Why not? Because we're not home enough to take care of a dog. I'd take care of it, I promise. That's what every kid says, and then the parents end up doing all the work. But, Emma, no dog. She pouted, but didn't push further, running back to the swings. Marcus smirked. That was impressively dad-like. I've had practice. You're getting soft in your old age. I'm 34. Like I said, old. They stayed until the sun started to set, until Emma was too tired to keep playing and Lily had to carry her half the way back to the car. And Caleb thought about how much his life had changed, how the things that used to terrify him, commitment, vulnerability, letting people in, had become the foundation of everything that mattered. Later that night, after Emma was asleep and the house was quiet, Caleb found Lily in the bathroom, getting ready for bed. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her. What? She asked, catching his reflection in the mirror. Nothing, just looking. That's creepy. I'm your husband. I'm allowed to be creepy. She laughed, turning to face him. What's going on in that head of yours? I was just thinking about how lucky I am. That's very sentimental for you. I know, don't get used to it. She crossed the space between them, wrapping her arms around his waist. I'm lucky too, you know. In case you were wondering. I wasn't, but it's nice to hear. You're impossible. You married me anyway. Biggest mistake of my life. Liar. She kissed him, and it was soft and familiar and everything he'd learned to trust. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. Do you think we'll always be this happy? I don't think happiness is constant. I think it's something you work at. Some days will be better than others. But yeah, I think if we keep choosing each other, we'll be okay. That's a very mature answer. I'm evolving, slowly. Better than not at all. They went to bed, tangled together in the way they'd learned to sleep, and Caleb lay awake for a while after Lily had drifted off, thinking about the life they'd built. It wasn't the life he'd imagined when he was younger, back when he'd thought success meant something bigger, something more visible from the outside. But it was better than anything he could have imagined, because it was real. The months continued to pass, marked by small milestones and ordinary moments that added up to something meaningful. Emma finished 5th grade and started talking about middle school with a mix of excitement and terror. The bakery hired its 5th employee, a kid fresh out of high school who reminded Caleb of himself at that age, eager and clumsy and willing to learn. Lily started consulting on the side, working with small businesses to help them grow, and she came alive in a way that made Caleb realize she'd been holding back part of herself in her corporate job. They took a vacation, the first real one Caleb had taken in years, driving up the coast for a long weekend. It rained most of the time, but they didn't care. They explored small towns, ate at diners with questionable health ratings, let Emma pick the music even though her taste was terrible. And Caleb realized, somewhere between a roadside attraction shaped like a giant donut and a beach where the waves were too cold for swimming, that this was what he'd been searching for without knowing it. Not perfection, but presence. One evening, near the end of summer, Caleb closed the bakery early and came home to find Lily and Emma in the backyard, attempting to assemble a fire pit they'd bought on impulse. It was going poorly. Emma was holding the instructions upside down, and Lily was trying to fit a piece that clearly belonged somewhere else. Need help? He called from the porch. No, Lily said, at the same time Emma said, yes. He joined them, taking over the assembly while they supervised, offering unhelpful suggestions and critiquing his technique. By the time the fire pit was finished, it was dark, and they lit the first fire, sitting in chairs they dragged from the garage, watching the flames dance. This is nice, Emma said, marshmallow on a stick, already burning. It is, Lily agreed. Caleb didn't say anything, just watched the two people he loved most in the world, illuminated by firelight, and felt the kind of peace he'd spent years convincing himself he didn't need. Dad? Emma said after a while. Yeah? Are you happy? It was the second time she'd asked him that question, and this time the answer came easier. Yeah, kid, I really am. Good. But Because if you weren't, that would be sad. And I don't want to deal with sad dad. Thanks for the concern. Anytime. Lily caught his eye across the fire, smiling in that way that said she understood what he was feeling without him having to explain it. And Caleb thought about all the ways he'd tried to protect himself from this exact moment, from having something worth losing, from caring so much that the thought of it ending was unbearable. But he'd been wrong to think protection was the same as safety. Real safety came from knowing you could survive loss if it happened, not from avoiding connection altogether. The fire burned low, and eventually Emma went inside, tired from the day. Lily stayed, moving to the chair beside Caleb, and they sat in the dying light, holding hands. "You know what I realized today?" Lily said quietly. "What?" "That I don't think about Chicago anymore. I used to, sometimes. Wonder what would have happened if I'd taken that job. But I don't anymore. This is exactly where I want to be." "No regrets?" "None. You?" "Not a single one." And he meant it. Every choice that had led him here, the good decisions and the mistakes, the moments of courage and the moments of fear, had been worth it. Because this was what mattered. Not the big gestures or the perfect moments, but the accumulation of ordinary days that added up to a life worth living. They stayed outside until the fire went out completely, until the night air turned cold and they had no choice but to go inside. And as Caleb locked the door behind them, checking that everything was secure the way he did every night, he realized he wasn't waiting for disaster anymore. Wasn't bracing for the moment when everything fell apart. He was just living. Present in each moment, trusting that tomorrow would come and they'd face it together, whatever it brought. Emma was already asleep when he checked on her, sprawled across her bed with a book on her chest. He moved it carefully, pulled the blanket over her, and stood there for a moment watching her breathe. This kid who'd been his entire world for so long, who'd taught him more about resilience and love than anyone else ever could. Lily was in bed when he joined her, reading by the soft glow of her lamp. She looked up when he came in, setting the book aside. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how none of this turned out the way I expected, but it turned out better." She reached for his hand, pulling him down beside her. "Life's funny that way." "Yeah, it is." He turned off the light, and they settled into the familiar comfort of shared sleep, and Caleb thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago. Scared, closed off, convinced that wanting more would only lead to loss. That man wouldn't recognize the life he was living now, wouldn't believe it was possible. But it was possible. It was happening. And Caleb had learned that the only thing standing between fear and happiness was the willingness to try, to show up, to believe that you deserved good things and to fight for them even when it felt impossible. The bakery, the family, the life he'd built from nothing and almost thrown away because he was too scared to believe in it. All of it was real. All of it was his to keep. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Caleb Hayes wasn't just surviving. He was living. Fully, messily, imperfectly living. And that was more than enough.